Hello again, and welcome to King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. My name is Michael Laurier, and I'm joined again by my co-host Helen Glover. So, hi everyone. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
It's good to see you again.
You
We
too.
are going to be talking today about loving detachment, and this was a topic that I came up with. Helen and I got together and we sorted out what we want to talk about this season, and this was a topic that I came up with because it's something that I teach my clients about, loving detachment. And if I might talk a little bit into that for a moment, I might say that loving detachment is something that people really struggle with, and I have in the past as well, because we're also we want everybody to agree with us, right? And we want things to go our way. And it's one of those things where when we try to, I guess, when we try to allow situations, often they don't turn out the way that we want them to. And so what we try to do unconsciously is we try to, I guess, control in many ways, control situations and people and their ways of thinking and their perceptions and all sorts of different things to kind of encourage them around to our own way of thinking. And so this is a really positive and powerful thing, loving detachment, because what we get to do is we get to love people, but detach from their outcomes and their thinking and their results and their perceptions and everything, and simply just allow. How does that sound to you, Helen? If I were to say to you, loving detachment is the most powerful thing that we can practice in a relationship or in life, what would you say to that?
Well, it's letting go of the reins, isn't it? Loving
Yep.
detachment is literally loving. It's another form of unconditional love.
Mm,
Um, but it really is just um, being so confident that you can love from a distance and that you'll not lose anything. That's what loving detachment means to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I would agree with that definitely. And it's something that I've struggled with in the past, to be honest. And I'm sure you have as well, and many other people have too. And I'm often actually asked the question, how can you love someone fully whilst being detached from them? And it's a really good question, right? But I don't think it's necessarily the right question per se, because you talked about unconditional love, and that's so important because when we truly unconditionally love someone, we don't try to control them, do we?
Mm, that's right.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I had my children, my first 2 children, I really had to look this one in the face because I didn't realize how much you do. You control your children, and you're doing it from that loving way of like, "No, I want this," and you have to keep checking yourself
Mm,
so that you're not putting your experience onto them, or that you're not wanting an outcome for you through your children. And there
yeah.
was never a point where it was more noticeable than when I had children. And you have to then really, really learn how to be completely detached from their outcome,
Mhm.
so that they can have their own experience. And it's like that with a partner. You can't be attached to the choices that they make. You have to support rather than, I mean, it comes back to that, I told you so situation. If your partner's made a decision that you necessarily weren't a part of, that you have to be detached from the fact that you weren't involved in that, but you're still loving that person and you're there for whatever their outcome is.
And I totally agree with that, and that I believe is really the epitome, if you like, of unconditional love. Because when we place conditions on people, it's around, you need to think the way that I do, you need to have the same opinions, we need to be creating the same results as I do, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of conditions around that, right? So if we really want to talk about unconditional love, we need to speak about this loving detachment, because we can, when we truly fully love somebody, then we allow them to go on their own journey, and we don't need to be attached to their view of us or the point of contention between us. I mean, people literally place their whole sense of identity within a relationship, for instance, as to whether the other person agrees with them or not.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
And
what a
and
nightmare.
and we make it mean, what was that?
What a nightmare.
Oh, but we've all done it, right? Like, we've all done it. I can put my hand up and say I've done it. I've sort of I've allowed my own point of view and my own opinion within relationship and within friendships and in professional life and everything, to really, well, it's okay to allow it to guide my way, but then when people disagree and when you're in contention with people, it really can create disruption, can't it? When you've
Mm,
attached
mm,
yourself to what other people believe of you and whether they agree with you.
mm. And
Yeah.
there's another side to that, isn't there? That the love of self without attachment,
Yep.
because that is something that I've certainly struggled with. That if I disagree with somebody, or if I have a say, that they will still love me. And
Mm,
so
mm,
for me, it's been about trying to um, have my own say and still feel really safe in that I don't have to be attached to what another person thinks. So it's also about detaching from the expectation you have personally. And so that outcome is really powerful as well, knowing that you don't have an attachment to the person, that if you don't agree with them, that you're in danger as well. So there's
yeah,
this
totally.
difficulty between, either having opinion and needing somebody else to have it, but also the point of having your own opinion, that you don't have to agree with somebody else. So there's a double edge to that. And
Mm.
you can, if two people coming at a relationship with either side of that, how difficult that would be and how that would play out.
Mm. And this piece around loving detachment really has a lot to do with the expectations that we place on other people as well, and the standards of behavior that we hold other people to. And when we start to detach from that, and when we go, okay, well, these are my standards of behavior, and this is how I want to conduct myself, and this is the things that I believe in and what I value. And it's actually okay for you to hold yourself to a different set of standards. And it's actually okay for you to believe different things, and that actually enriches our experience in relationship together, or as friends or colleagues or whatever it might be.
Mm,
It's a real powerful piece. As soon as in my relationship coaching, when I speak about loving detachment, it's something that is so alien to people, because it's like, well, don't we have to agree to find a way through? It's like, actually, no, you don't. You don't need
mm,
to agree. There's a richness in the contention. There's a richness in the experience of disagreement and finding a way through that that works for both people.
mm, mm. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we talked about unconditional love before, and I really believe that is the standard at which we could hold ourselves to if we really believe in unconditional love. Unconditional love means that you get to have your journey without any of my influence over your journey.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think it's an amazing demonstration with your children, that you don't get to choose what your children do. You don't get to you don't have to be upset or disappointed or, really, really overly excited either about any choices that they make. You can watch them evolve and watch them grow and watch their decisions and changes, and without thinking, oh, because I know, as when I had my children initially, you have a future you start planning in your mind as
Mm,
to
mm.
what they're going to be like, and then as soon as you start going to the shops and realize you've got no dignity, and anything that you thought you would get away with from that point on, it's like, no,
Oh,
no, there's no kind of mask in parenting. It's the most judged thing in the world, and you have to be not attached to what other people think of you at the shops when your child's on the floor. That's even, even like completely detaching from people's opinions about what you might be doing, standing in your own kind of strength as to what you think is right, above all else. And that's a really important piece, to hold what you think's dear without really being swayed. You don't have to hold on to it with that kind of, disdain and the absolute determination and the destruction of everything else, but to go, that's okay. You don't have to like that I'm doing this, or you don't have to understand that I'm doing this, but I'm okay with doing this because I believe in it
mm,
personally.
mm.
Yeah.
I think you're right. You've brought up that children part, that children piece a couple of times now, and it really is. Children teach us all about loving detachment, and they
Mm,
don't even mean to, because they're just being in the moment. They're being present in the moment.
mm,
They don't have any filters. There's no inhibitions in children, right? So they just behave and show up in the way that they feel right there in the moment, which
mm,
for many of us really triggers us on a very, very deep level, because we've built up all this resistance around, oh no, you can't do that, and you can't behave this way, and you can't say that in these circumstances, and this is not how you do that. And we do things a certain way, and we place all these expectations of behavior onto our children, bearing in mind, of course, we need to create a container for them, in order for them to feel safe. But what we as adults tend to do is we tend to project our own insecurities, our own sense of inadequacy, and our own feelings of lack of worth and all sorts of different things onto our children in many ways. And
mm,
that's not that's not unconditional love, and that's also not detachment, is it? And we
mm,
can still love our children and detach from their behavior without that having to mean anything to us.
mm.
Mm,
And I think that that's certainly been my biggest journey with detachment, probably, which is why I've mentioned it a couple of times, because it's this constant lesson in I don't have to plan my child's life after school. I don't have to make them be this person at school. They don't have to achieve that if it's not important to them. They don't
mm,
have to have that pathway. It's this constant adjustment to allowing and across the board, then allowing life to take place, not being attached to the outcome of your own circumstances. So I did all of this and it didn't work out. It's kind of, I have to have no attachment to what happens at the end of this, knowing that I'm making this choice now because it's how I feel today and it's what's important. And if it doesn't work out, I have to be full of the detachment to be able to forgive and to keep moving without feeling that I'm going to throw in the towel because it didn't go my way.
mm.
So it really is across the board, that kind of constant like releasing. And it's the surrender piece, isn't it, as well? The surrender to what is,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and what you
Exactly.
thought it would be. Mm,
And I think this is where, in my experiences, where a lot of feelings of betrayal and breaking trust comes in as well. Because as soon as we have an expectation on somebody else to behave a certain way to our standards of behavior, and then they don't do that, we almost feel like it's a betrayal, and that there's some kind of betrayal of trust that's happened, when what we've actually done is we've attached our expectations to that person to behave in a certain way, think in a certain way, but whatever it is that they do in the way that we would like them to, because that's how we would. And as soon as we detach from that, then all of a sudden betrayal disappears as well,
mm,
because there's no trust for people to break. There's no way that people can betray us if we haven't, I guess, projected our standards of behavior on them. And we've
mm,
detached from all of that and gone, that's okay. That's your journey. That doesn't need to mean anything for me and
mm,
to me. And I don't
mm,
have to build this big story around it that you've betrayed me or that you've broken my trust in some way. So it's
mm,
so powerful. It is so powerful.
mm.
What do you think? We talk about shadow a lot, Helen. What do you think the shadow of loving detachment is?
Oh God, loving detachment, the opposite to that, really, that real kind of it's an insecurity. So it's holding on for dear life, because
There's also other things, isn't there? Like indifference and apathy as
mm,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a number of different areas there where if really kind of being in the strength of detachment is to be able to allow and let go and to trust, it's a real trust piece, then for me the opposite of that, however it might appear, is just being completely unable to trust the situation and therefore having all of the thoughts and opinions and projections that go with that depending on what your personality is.
Yeah, totally.
And so definitely if there's an overwhelm there, it can turn into an apathy. If it's that kind of terror, then it's the white knuckle ride, and it's the
Mm,
inability to let go of something, and then the beating of the dead horse, so to speak, and then coercive control of partners and friendships and relationships, children, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, there's actually quite a lot of shadow to
mm.
to the detachment process.
Yeah, so what I've observed in loving detachment, the shadow of loving detachment, is that this is usually how it works. They go, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I might try that." And they go, "Okay, cool. Well, I've got this opinion. This is my opinion, and I'm now going to let go of whatever your opinion is, and allow you to have your opinion without me feeling the need to
Mm,
control how you feel or what you think or how you're going to behave." And what people usually find is that that tends to work, and that works because the other people doesn't feel they don't feel that oppressive control that inflicting our own standards of behavior on the other person can feel sometimes for the other person. And so this begins to work, and they practice it time and time again. It's like, this is cool. So I have found what the shadow of that is, as I said before, indifference, complacency, um, and apathy in many ways. Because then what people do is they go, "Oh well, I can behave however I want and do whatever I want," and then detach from how that other person feels and what they do and what that means to them. Because
yeah.
this is my stuff and that's their stuff, and I don't need to worry about their stuff because I'm
Mm,
lovingly detaching. And
mm,
so what we find
yeah.
is that we find in relationships, people will go to the extreme, and that's the shadow, right? When you go to the extreme and you stop caring and giving a
Mm,
shit about the other person. So
mm,
there's a real balancing act in this when you've gone from when you've gone from how we normally act and behave in life, which is, oh, other people's opinions are really important and I need you to agree with me. And if you don't, what does that mean for me and who I am as an individual? We go from that to, okay, well, cool. I can have my opinion. I can feel very safe and secure in my opinion. And whatever your opinion is, that's okay. And I don't need to attach myself to that. There's a
mm,
really beautiful balance between the two. And sometimes we can go to the extreme where it's like, well, I'm going to behave, feel, act, think whatever I want. And I don't
mm,
give a shit what you think and say.
mm.
So there's
Yeah.
such, yeah,
I have to say, when I was thinking about this subject this morning, I was thinking about when people are in sexual relationships in a detached community type setup, when somebody is really into somebody, and then the person goes, "Oh no, but I'm detached and I'm loving and I'm just I don't have any attachment to anything." And they use the whole Buddha piece for
right.
completely avoiding commitment. And so there's a point where there's a total irresponsibility of another person's feelings, like you were just mentioning. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Like it can be then to the point of irresponsibility rather than responsibility. So
Yeah,
it's kind
totally.
of, instead of going, "Oh well, I don't have to worry about you agreeing with me and being part of everything that I think and do," to the point of like, I'm just going to behave however I want, exactly like you
Mm.
said, regardless of the other person's feelings. And there's another line in there as well of, okay, where's the submissive part of me as well that says, okay, I'm going to be detached from how you're behaving, but is that behavior something that's a deal breaker as well? So
Yeah.
it's not just kind of letting go people's bad behavior, it's letting go on opinions or on different things like that. So there's all of these fine lines in detachment as to the strength of your character, as to where you take that turn.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
yeah.
And that comes down to boundaries. What you were just talking about comes down to boundaries. It's okay to have boundaries, but not to inflict our standards of behavior onto others. And I
Mm,
think there's a
mm,
real distinction there. There's a real distinction, and we have to learn to discern between the two,
mm,
because the distinction is where the beauty is. The distinction is where the real magic
mm,
exists and lives, between how am I inflicting my standards of behavior on somebody else and expecting them to behave in the way that I would, um, or am I just enforcing a boundary here that's got to do with self-worth, right?
mm,
So there's a real distinction between the two. And I would encourage everybody to find out what that distinction is for them and start to practice it in their lives, and really especially in relationship with their partner and with their children as well. Because one of the most beautiful things I've found with my our little daughter Crystal is, as soon as I started detaching from what her behavior meant to me and detaching from the fact that I believe that her behavior was a reflection on my parenting, right? And my standard as an individual and how I was viewed, she felt so much freer in her life to express however she wanted to express. And because that didn't mean anything to me, I wasn't trying to control her behavior. Of course, there was a container there that she had to be within, around safety and security and all those sorts of things. But she actually calmed down a lot as soon as she didn't feel like she was being controlled. And so
Mm,
imagine what that can do in your intimate relationship with your partner as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was little, and somebody was gossiping, and when somebody's trying to get you to see something about your daughter where they're kind of subliminally trying to get them in trouble. And I had this conversation where it was like, your daughter did this, and I'm not sure whether you did that. And there was this real feeling of like, are you trying to kind of put my daughter in trouble with me? And my response to that, my daughter was horrified because she thought she'd be in trouble. And I said, it's not up to me. I don't want to raise you so that other people approve of you. I want to raise you so that I know you're a really good person.
Yeah.
And so whatever that looks like, and in that moment, I felt detached from what this person thought of my daughter, because it was not what I knew of her. So I didn't have to put my daughter into that situation where she felt she was in the wrong for somebody else's standard.
Mm.
And that happens all the time, in our relationships with our children and at work as well, where we're put in a situation where we're shamed by another person.
Mm.
So, detachment works so incredibly well in shame, to actually
Yeah,
be
it
detached
really does.
from the shame that somebody kind of puts you in, tries to get you to accept it,
Yeah.
and feel bad about something, and then change your behavior accordingly because you're being guilted or shamed into that. And detachment from that kind of shaming, is incredibly powerful, to kind of go, I hear you, but no, I don't need to be attached to your opinion in that. Mm,
And imagine if we could teach our children to simply approve of themselves, and they don't require, and even our approval, they don't require anyone else's approval or validation except their
mm,
own sense of self-validation and self-approval. Can you
mm,
imagine the empowered individuals that we would be raising if we
mm,
could we could teach our children to do that?
mm.
Good
Absolutely.
discussion. Good discussion, Helen. As usual, we've gone over our scheduled 20 minutes as we always do, but that's all right. It's all good. So, what would you say the takeaways for people could be today around loving detachment?
Well, it's noticing, isn't it? Noticing where you might be attached to something that really it's not that important, and how freeing would it be for you to let that go?
Yeah.
Um, Try and find maybe 2 to 3 things this week that you can let go of the outcome, knowing that it's not outside of what you believe is important, but that it actually is an enriching experience.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. And I would say that my message to everybody around loving detachment is begin to, as you said, begin to practice it. 2 or 3 times here and there. Just practice. Just begin to become aware of imposing and inflicting and projecting your standards of behavior and how you think things should be on the people that you love, and watch your relationships begin to transform as people feel more accepted and validated by you, simply by you releasing control on their standards of behavior, and
Mm,
instead find some really good quality boundaries for yourself rather than inflicting your standards of behavior on others.
mm,
Cool.
mm. Love it.
Awesome, awesome. Loving detachment. Practice it and your relationships will transform. And we will see you next week on another episode of King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. Thanks again, Helen.
Thanks, Michael. See you,
And
everyone.
thank you, everybody, for watching.